Welcome to another Pick Up and Play. First, I'd like to point out the confusing nature of this series and how I will correct it. Some of my Pick Up and Plays are me playing a game and, just chatting about stuff. But I also use the same series for videos where I intersperse these dialogues with more detailed shots of the device or the toy or game or whatever I picked up somewhat recently. The dialogue in these videos has been more or less off the cuff, but when I have an item where I'd like to elaborate, then I include these fancy cuts to different angles or different scenarios where you might use it. From now on, if the video carries an SP suffix, it will be a discussion of the item with, just some more slightly fancy cuts. Furthermore, if you see this symbol and hear this sound at the start of the video, it will also indicate this is an SP video. Finally, the same symbol will appear in the video thumbnail. I'll have to edit, my previous video thumbnails to reflect this, but, the change starts here. So let's get to the focus of today's Pick Up and Play. Here is the Gefen GTV-COMPSVID-2-HDMIS, or more commonly, the Gefen Composite-to-HDMI scaler. The name is incomplete though because it also handles S-video to HDMI. Basically, it takes your ancient composite or S-video signal and converts it to HDMI on newer displays. And it does a great job at that. Let me get this straight. It does allow control over the output image quality, but its purpose, it's not really to improve the signal, it's to get the image and audio from your input over to HDMI with as little modification and delay as possible. This device, well, it's pretty niche in its usefulness, and if you were to buy it at suggested retail price, you would be insane not to spend the money on a solution that translates analog RGB signal to HDMI. But you can find this excellent gizmo regularly on eBay for around $30. I mostly purchased it as a means of future-proofing. Inevitably, TV manufacturers will remove our favorite analog inputs on TVs. I understand this is not a practical reason for most people who are interested in this device, but I can't guarantee I'll find good cheap LCDs in the future with these inputs. HDMI should last somewhat longer, I hope. Most of the retro consoles with composite outputs send a signal of around 240p. There are some exceptions with certain gains, but for the most part that's true. Getting that signal to your HDMI and scaled to your TV's native resolution presents some problems though. You can get fuzzy edges on images or introduce lag in gameplay. The specs of this device quote supported input resolutions of 480i or 576i, but in practice I'm able to get the signal from my Genesis, my Super Nintendo, and my Nintendo over the TV without any issue. These are the consoles I tested so far, but others should work as well. What I really like about this device is that even though it scales up to 1080p and has a refresh rate of 60 Hz, you can customize both the output resolution and refresh rate. It gives you other options to fine-tune like color or brightness and contrast, the sharpness, noise reduction. You can even set like the audio delay because even though I don't detect any lag, others might. It supports plenty of options for setting the aspect ratio so you can get it to fit nice and cleanly on your TV. Alright, let's see this baby in action. Okay, so this is being captured straight off the TV with my camera, and this is the original composite signal running from my Genesis. You know what, let's get a still frame so we can get a nice comparison shot. And here is the HDMI. And here are the images synced up side by side. To me, the images look pretty darn similar, which is great. There might be some differences in color just because of how I set up the inputs. It would take a little longer for me to actually match color output between the two different inputs. But what you really want to focus on is the edges of pixels and look for any kind of, like I said, artifacting. And it doesn't look like there's any artifacts, so that's pretty awesome. Let's get a shot of some text so you can compare that. I think the key to getting the best image with little delay is choosing an image output resolution that matches your TV's native resolution as close as possible. That way, most of the scaling work is done on the Gefen. Want to take a look at the Super Nintendo? Of course you do! Okay, so this is the S-video signal being captured off screen, and it's going to obviously look cleaner than the Genesis just because it's being sent through S-video. Let me get a pause frame here so I switch over to HDMI. You get a nice comparison. And here's the HDMI. Again, colors may look different just because of how the inputs are set up. Mainly just focus on the edges of pixels. Side by side. Sounds like it's an eye doctor visit. Okay, so that looks good to me. But let's get a shot of text side by side. There are plenty more readily available composite S-video scalers which do a lousy HDMI translation. The Gefen, it actually did a really outstanding job, much better than my TV, at taking the composite, scaling it, and outputting it to HDMI. If you're patient enough, you can grab the Gefen at a great price.